It all started with a cocky liberal musician, a guy known for taking cheap shots at conservatives. He was confident, almost too confident, as he sat at a grand piano in front of a small audience, casually talking about how art and music belong to the left and how conservatives lack creativity. Then, with a smug grin, he points at Karoline Leavitt, who just happened to be in the crowd. "You're a conservative, right? Tell me, can you even play a single note?" he taunts, clearly expecting laughter from the crowd. A few chuckles ripple through the audience. Karoline just raises an eyebrow and smiles, her confidence unshaken. Instead of taking the bait, she shrugs casually. "I don't know. Why don't you let me give it a try?" The crowd goes silent. The musician wasn't expecting that. And that's when everything changed. The liberal musician leans back, smirking, clearly thinking this will be a joke. He waves toward the piano like he's doing Karoline a favor. "All right, be my guest," he says, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Just don't embarrass yourself." A few people in the audience chuckle again, expecting Karoline to struggle or maybe even back out. Karoline? She just steps up to the piano with zero hesitation. Her face is calm, but there's a tiny spark in her eyes, like she knows something that the musician doesn't. She places her hands on the keys, takes a deep breath, and then, the second Karoline's fingers touch the keys, a wave of sound fills the room. But not just any sound, perfectly fluid, masterful playing that no one was expecting. The smug look on the musician's face? Gone. His eyes widen as the melody flows effortlessly from Karoline's hands. The audience, which was chuckling just moments ago, falls dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. A few heads turn toward the musician, waiting for his reaction. His jaw is literally hanging open. Karoline, completely unfazed, just keeps playing, and it's clear now that this isn't just some basic tune. She's a real pianist. And she's good. As Karoline's fingers dance across the piano, the so-called expert musician shifts uncomfortably in his seat. His plan was simple: humiliate her, make her look foolish. But now, it's backfiring spectacularly. People in the audience start whispering to each other. They're nudging their friends, eyes wide, exchanging looks that all say the same thing. Speech balloon. Wait, she can actually play? The musician's fake smile twitches as he tries to recover. He leans forward, as if trying to find some flaw, some mistake, something to justify his initial mockery. Police car light, but there is none. Police car light. Karoline is playing with confidence, precision, and passion, something even a trained ear can't fake. And now the musician's worst nightmare is unfolding. He's the one looking like a fool. But it's about to get even worse. At first, there was just a murmur, a few scattered whispers and exchanged glances. But now, collision, the entire room is buzzing. Collision. People stop their conversations mid-sentence. Waiters in the back pause with trays in hand. Even the bartender, who is casually wiping down glasses, freezes to watch what's unfolding. As no one expected this. The musician, once smug and overconfident, is now visibly sweating. He had invited Karoline up to make fun of her, to prove a point. Musical note, but instead, she's stealing the show. Her fingers move across the keys like she was born for this. The melody builds, flowing effortlessly, each note played with power and grace. Then, clapping hands, a single clap, then another. And then, the entire room erupts into applause. The musician plasters on a fake smile, but anyone paying attention can see the panic behind his eyes. This wasn't supposed to happen. And he knows it's only going to get worse for him. The liberal musician's smug expression is long gone. Now, he's shifting uncomfortably, trying to mask his shock with an awkward chuckle. Musical note. Karoline keeps playing, her confidence growing with every note. But he can't let this happen. Lightbulb desperate, he interrupts. Lightbulb. Okay. That's the impressive, he says, waving his hand dramatically. But let's see if you can keep up with something a bit more challenging. As the crowd murmurs. Is this his way of saving face? A last-ditch effort to regain control of the situation? He sits beside her on the piano bench and starts playing a rapid, complex jazz riff, his fingers flying across the keys. The music is chaotic but skillful, and he smirks as if he's just outplayed her. Smirking face, he thinks he's won. But then, Fire Karoline doesn't flinch. She just tilts her head, smirks back, and without missing a beat, jumps in and matches him note for note. Collision, the crowd goes wild. And now, the musician's face turns pale. Because this wasn't just luck, she's outplaying him. And he knows it. The musician's smirk fades completely as Karoline effortlessly keeps up with his intricate jazz riff. The speed, the rhythm, the precision, she's matching him note for note. Collision, then she takes it up a notch. With a confident smile, she adds her own flourish, weaving in a melody so intricate and beautiful that the entire room falls silent. Musical notes, this isn't just skill, this is raw talent. Face screaming in fear, the musician's eyes widen. He stumbles over a few notes, trying to regain his footing, but it's too late. She's leading the performance now. As people start pulling out their phones. This isn't just a challenge anymore. It's a full-blown musical duel. Fire, and Karoline is winning. The musician tries one last desperate trick, throwing in a complex classical transition, hoping to trip her up. Smirking face, big mistake. Without hesitation, Karoline seamlessly adapts, her fingers dancing over the keys with stunning precision. She doesn't just keep up, she makes it sound even better. Bomb, and that's when the musician realizes. He's completely outmatched. Clapping hands, the crowd erupts in cheers. Cold-faced, the musician sits there stunned. He just got humiliated in front of everyone, and by the very person he tried to mock. Speech balloon, and then Karoline leans over with a smirk and says, "Was that the challenge you were talking about?" Dizzy face, oh, he's done. The crowd is still buzzing, their applause deafening. Karoline's final flourish hangs in the air like a sweet echo, and it feels like time has paused. The musician, now visibly defeated, looks around at the stunned audience. He grips the edge of the piano as if trying to steady himself, but he can't hide the embarrassment anymore. Downcast face with sweat, the smugness that once filled his face is now gone. He looks like a kid who just got caught cheating in class, realizing he can't talk his way out of this. He looks down at his hands, now resting uselessly on the keys, and for a brief moment, Karoline sees a flash of regret. His ego has taken a serious blow. But the worst part, Karoline isn't done with him yet. She leans back in her seat, crossing her arms with a look of calm satisfaction. Collision, she's not gloating, she's owning the moment. Microphone, as the crowd quiets down a little. One of the onlookers calls out, "You're incredible." Karoline's response is cool, collected, and dripping with irony. "Thanks, but I don't think he's going to be challenging me again anytime soon." Smiling face with sunglasses, boom. Mic drop moment. But instead of firing back, the musician simply sits there, a silent acknowledgement of his defeat. The crowd, sensing the awkwardness, starts to murmur. Some exchange knowing glances, while others are still shaking their heads in disbelief at what just went down. Broken Heart, the musician, realizing he can't salvage his pride, slinks off to the side. He doesn't even have the courage to say anything. He just walks off defeated, leaving the piano behind like it's a burden he can't carry anymore. Sparkles, but Karoline? She stands tall. Her shoulders back, her posture confident as ever. Speech balloon, next time, she says to the room. Don't underestimate someone just because they don't look like they should be able to play. Smirking face, and the crowd goes wild. Party popper, Karoline has won. Not just the challenge, but the respect of everyone watching. The musician may have tried to mock her, but she stunned everyone, and now they'll remember her name. Her talent won out over his ego, hands down. As Karoline finishes her stunning performance, she stands there, breathing steadily, barely breaking a sweat. Her confidence radiates through the room like a bright light that contrasts sharply with the now silenced musician. Downcast face with sweat, he's still processing what just happened. The weight of his own arrogance presses down on him like a ton of bricks, and he can barely hold his head up. His fingers linger on the piano keys, almost as if they're ashamed of what they just failed to produce. He casts a glance over at Karoline, his face contorting in frustration. But there's something else there now, respect. Even if it's hard for him to admit it, the musician knows that she outplayed him, and it's not something he can ignore. Faced with monocle for the first time, he starts to question his previous assumptions. He had been so confident, so sure that he could shut her down with a single mocking challenge. But now the reality has hit him square in the face. Musical notes, her musical skills weren't just a challenge, they were an awakening for him. She played with a level of emotional depth and control that he hadn't anticipated from someone he had so easily dismissed. The silence between them now feels thick and charged with the unspoken realization that talent can come in unexpected forms. And though he won't say it, a part of him feels like he's been handed a lesson in humility. Disappointed face, his ego, bruised and battered, is hard to repair now. Eyes, he watches Karoline from across the room, noticing how composed and unbothered she is. She's not rubbing it in his face. Instead, she stands there as if it's just another day in her life. Thought balloon, it hits him even harder. She didn't need to prove anything. This wasn't about showing off or taking down an adversary. This was about being genuine. Playing for the love of music, not to compete with anyone or anything. As the crowd continues to cheer, he's stuck in a moment of quiet self-reflection. The image of Karoline confidently walking away from the piano, her head held high, is now burned into his mind. Tornado, his arrogance, is being replaced by admiration. Microphone, he never thought this day would come, when the tables would turn so drastically. He had never in his life imagined a scenario where he'd lose to someone he tried so hard to belittle. Eyes, and yet, here he was. A humble man. The entire room now buzzes with excitement and admiration for Karoline, but the musician can barely hear it. His world has shifted, and for the first time, he's not sure how to feel about it. Fire, but Karoline isn't just a winner today. She's a force to be reckoned with. She didn't need to mock or belittle him back. She let her talent speak for itself, and in doing so, she's proven that true mastery comes from within, not from the need to tear others down. Her eyes scan the room one last time, and with a smile that's both victorious and serene, she takes a step back. This moment is hers. The musician, with a newfound respect for her and a bruise to his ego, knows he'll never look at her the same way again. As the last notes of Karoline's piano performance reverberate through the room, there's a palpable pause. The audience, who had been expecting some sort of confrontation or tension to linger, instead witnesses something unexpected. The musician, who only moments ago was so sure of his own abilities, sits in stunned silence, clearly struggling to digest what just unfolded. There's an awkward moment of silence where it seems like he might ignore her completely, too embarrassed to acknowledge his earlier taunts. But then something surprising happens. With a heavy sigh, he looks up, meets her eyes, and gives her a nod, a small but meaningful gesture. "You're good. Really good," he says, almost under his breath, his voice rough. It's not a challenge. It's not even begrudging. It's real, and it's respectful. The tension in the room begins to dissolve, and a soft murmur of approval ripples through the audience. They had expected him to be defensive, to lash out, but instead, he shows the maturity to admit defeat. The crowd has been waiting for a dramatic conclusion, but instead, they witness an unexpected moment of grace. Karoline, for her part, doesn't respond with arrogance. She doesn't take the opportunity to rub her victory in his face. Instead, she simply smiles, a smile that isn't smug or self-congratulatory. It's a smile of understanding, of knowing that talent speaks for itself and doesn't need to be validated by others. "It's not about proving anything to you," Karoline says softly, looking the musician directly in the eyes. "It's about the music." The simplicity of her words hits him harder than anything he could have imagined. In this world full of egos and competition, she didn't care about winning or losing. She cared about the art, the beauty of playing for the sake of playing, without any need for validation from others. For the first time in his life, the musician feels small, not because of her talent, but because of his own inability to see beyond his own self-interest. Karoline didn't need to beat him. She only needed to be herself. And in doing so, she turned everything he believed about success and recognition on its head. The musician stands up and walks toward Karoline. His steps are slow, deliberate, as if he's processing the weight of everything that just happened. He offers her his hand, not as a challenge, but as an acknowledgement of her skill and spirit. "Well played," he says, a sincere smile on his face. Karoline takes his hand without hesitation, her own smile warm but humble. There's no need for further words. The exchange speaks for itself. The tension in the room has finally disappeared, replaced by a quiet admiration for both musicians. They've just shared a moment of growth, both of them learning from the other in ways they never expected. "I think we both learned something today," Karoline says with a wink. Music's about more than just showing off. It's about connection, feeling, and sharing a piece of your soul. The crowd is on their feet now, applauding not just for the musical talent they witnessed, but for the human connection that unfolded before them. In this quiet yet powerful exchange, The music has spoken louder than words ever could. And as the last echoes of the applause fade, one thing is clear: the musician's life will never be the same.